each of us has a different perspective on what is going to be that domino that falls, that is going to make the whole thing fall. And so we're going to each give you our perspective. So we have Douglas Gabriel in this corner, and we have Michael McKibben over here in this corner. Oh, and that would be Tyler Gabriel over in this corner. Well, that's not a corner. That is a
triangle. Absolutely. Now, who's it going to be? Mitch McConnell, the Chinese, the spy? Diane Weinstein? Who's it going to be?
Diane Feinstein.
Feinstein. I always say Weinstein because I mix her up with the criminal pedophile and sexual guy in Hollywood who they have pretty much let off the hook so far, right? Anyway, who's it going to be? If people kept saying, how about James Wolfe? Because they're going to catch him because of the leaking. No, he's just perjury. He didn't leak. Been leaking for 20 years, but he didn't leak anything. How about Andrew McCabe? How about Hillary? Oh, yeah. Podesta, perhaps? No, how about... I don't think either one of you will name this, but what about George Soros, the mastermind behind it all? Is there one that can be the domino that starts the domino effect? What do you think, Michael?
Yeah, I mean, I think that most of these things get broken open by some sort of domino. So in my vote is not one person, or maybe it's the group of 497 that you call the what do you call them? The SES 500.
Yep.
It's that group of Department of Justice paymasters for the Senior Executive Service that it appears to be run by Bruce Orr. So, because the SES is so connected to the Queen's Privy Council and the activities in Europe and the activities in China and the U.S. and the takeover of our various agencies and them allowing Serco to come in from Britain and take over the Patent Office and run our airports, and it appears to me that it's going to be the takedown of the paymasters by our president, that the Senior Executive Service has got to be abolished, and he needs to start with this SES 500.
So where do you see the first motion happening that would set all of that, down like a domino effect? Would it be that Bruce Orr gets fired?
Well, Bruce Orr is clearly one of the paymasters, and so the question would be whether he talks. I very much doubt he will, but it's an administrative decision. This SES was formed by an act of Congress. It can be either neutralized or abolished by either Congress or, in the case of the president, at least neutralized to where their pay goes away. And that's usually the choke point for all of these activities is who's paying their check. I mean, these people get up every day, they take their kids to school, they attend church, school functions, they all live. And if you take away their pay, then they're going to stop doing those things that they're doing right now, it seems to me.
Okay. Well, I have kind of an outlier that I see as the domino, and that is George Papadopoulos. Have you seen his tweets lately? Mm-hmm. He is taking bold step forwards to tell his part of the story. And as I'm sure you know, Michael, Douglas...
Actually, I've been down in the mines. I don't know a lot about this.
Okay. Well, Douglas, early on, last year was calling out George Papadopoulos in a major way as being a part of this whole conspiracy, this overthrow of the United States government, which works its way back to the Privy Council. And so I think that with George's newest tweets, he's going to set that motion. And once he does, we can see the clear trail from the overthrow of Donald J. Trump to the Queen of England.
Wow.
Why?
Could be right.
Y'all got first choice, and you got good choices. I'm going to have to make up one. I think SES, Bruce Orr, directly connected. Bruce Orr, closed-door testimony has shown exactly as James Baker has shown, the willingness to give up some information and the willingness to admit that they were absolutely at the core, at the hub of this amazing conspiracy that they were involved in. So Bruce Orr, trying to protect the lovely Nellie because of her collusion with between the FBI, CIA, where she had been working in open source works that she had been trained in. She went and worked for Fusion GPS. The question is not a question anymore. Fusion GPS was in direct collusion with the FBI because James Baker has said so. He also said he was in direct collusion with the Democratic National Committee through Michael Sussman, a lawyer in Perkins Coie, and also...
Why does that law firm keep popping up?
Well, they always represent the political parties in major affairs like this because then they use the money and they divert it to the opposition research companies or the terrible lobbyists who work against them on the other side. So I think what you've said about Bruce Orr is a key factor, absolutely key factor. Bruce Orr could turn because it would be him and his wife he'd be protecting. Now the question would be, and you know this much better than I, would they be able to give immunity to both of them? They did to the Podesta brothers over the issue that Robert Mueller was, in fact, indicting and literally, I was going to say crucifying, but they put Robert Mueller put Paul Manafort in jail over the same exact things that the Podesta brothers did. They got immunity because they testified in all their criminal areas to give them full immunity so they could never be called or indicted, called before the court, or they could be called before the court, They can't be indicted for those same crimes that they testified and got the immunity for. So will Bruce Orr and Nellie both be getting immunity? That would be good because I think Nellie is also certainly criminal in this, just like Glenn Simpson, her boss, who worked with the Russians, Natalia Veselnitskaya, as well as Oleg Deripaska and many others, who are all working against Trump. So these were outside foreign agents working in political opposition, working with Bruce Orr's wife, working with Bruce Orr, working with James Baker. And through James Baker...
Isn't that called treason?
Yes, it's called treason. And that's to not only rig the election, but then to overthrow a sitting president. And so I would vote for James Baker. Now, that's been my vote lately. I had to rule out Carter Page. He doesn't have any power, even though he's now opening a lawsuit. George Papadopoulos has very powerful lawyers, and he was the linchpin here.
I mean, he could expose the whole darn thing.
That's how we're learning about what really happened because Christopher Steele is in 2 lawsuits. He's actually 2 lawsuits here in America under Judge Leon. And Judge Leon is a bunk buddy with John Podesta. So close that you can't separate them.
They teach together.
They teach together. And when Judge Leon took his job, he said, I can only take this job as long as I do not give up my teaching gig with John Podesta. That's how close they are. That's who's watching over the Christopher Steele trial that literally concerns the dossier created by the Democratic National Committee. They're being sued by Alexei Gubarev, I think is his name, and the 3 Alpha Bank oligarchs. So there are multiple lawsuits here in America and other lawsuits in Britain where Christopher Steele, the very person who was working directly with Bruce Orr, his very, very good buddy. As a matter of fact, that's where it supposedly started. That's a lie. It started in 5 or 6 places at one time, the whole thing. Don't get me started on that. But when it comes back to it, nobody put their name on more documents or gave legal approval for more illegal activities out of the FBI than James Baker, the head counsel of Comey, the one who had to legally approve what Comey read to the world, which was the exoneration of Clinton, which was the largest public espionage act in U.S. history, was completely exonerated with the approval of James Baker. And don't forget that from the beginning, I named the following person as the fall guy. I told everyone the second that a special counsel was a grand jury was called for and a grand jury was impaneled, I had said that through the CIA counterintelligence, there was an operation. It was never an investigation. That's why Comey could perjure himself over and over again and then say lies to the public, say lies to Trump. There was never an investigation of Trump.
Oh, he was working an operation, and it's okay to lie if you're working an operation.
That is what I told you, and I
did.
told you from the
Now,
beginning.
Click.
National security, under the auspices of whoever the most powerful CIA agent that has the ability to write national security letters, will be the person operating a counterintelligence attack against Trump. We now know that has come out, and it is true. It's called Crossfire Hurricane. And of course, Peter Strzok was the regional agent who was in charge of that and created what was called the small group. And then that is when he moved to the FBI, working with the FBI's counterintelligence division. And again, under national security, he was able to fly under the radar of everyone and do whatever he wanted. They didn't need the FISA warrants. I've told everyone that all along. We now know those FISA warrants were applications, and there was never a hearing. I told everyone that. It was Peter Strzok writing national security letters that drove this. It went to the FBI, working with John Brennan's counterintelligence in the CIA, working with Comey, Andrew McCabe, and the whole group that I called the Bunk Buddies in the FBI, working directly with John Carlin in the Department of Justice National Security Division, who would be my other person that I said, one of the two of these will squeal. If they get caught, they're the first two lawyers who jumped off, John Carlin, James Baker.
Okay, Douglas. You do know that everybody you're naming is exactly who Michael's calling out. They're all senior executive service operatives.
Mm-hmm. Top dog. Bruce Orr, you pointed it out. And
well, these are the saboteurs in our government, and until they're gone, the president is going to be thwarted. Anything he tries to do. It seems to me this is the keystone next step. It's not going to be one person, because when you talk about lawsuits starting anymore, that's all these lawyers want to hear. Oh, good, a lawsuit. I'll just talk to my buddy, the judge, and we'll drag this thing out for 5 years until everybody gets tired of it. And so lawsuits, I don't think, are the answer. I think it's got to be executive action.
Well, as
or people coming forward and actually confessing.
Yes. And that's because they're caught red-handed.
Right.
Can we count on Michael Horowitz and his Inspector General investigation?
Well, he's SES.
And remember, Trump gave him, 3 weeks ago or 2 weeks ago, 1 week to look at the declassification of the 20 pages of the FISA warrant application that Nunes and Jim Jordan say are the most damnable pieces of evidence to demonstrate this conspiracy, basically. And yet, Michael Horowitz has done nothing. Remember, Andrew McCabe is in a court case right now over being a lack of candor. James Wolfe only got charged with perjury, not fantastic espionage, and leaking as an institutional form of leaking through his girlfriend, Allie Watkins. So when we're looking at these things, we're seeing the grossest miscarriage of justice, because the lawyers at the heart of it are the ones who have to sign off of these things.
Right. John
Carlin and James Baker. And these two, hardly anyone could actually stand up and say they are more responsible for legalizing Obama's, and this was Obama. Remember now that James Baker is rolling over and giving them the bait to say, I am the key. I am the one key that you give me full immunity, and I will take it to the top. I'll take it straight to Obama.
When are we going to, I know this is a little bit off topic, but when are we going to stop permitting lawyers to run our government?
That would be a great day.
There's dead space in the microphone.
Yeah, that'd be a great day. I'm dreaming about that as you say it, because fake justice is now something on the top of our list, as you pointed out. The second you're going to sue me? Good. I know. Let me appoint the judge. I know the outcome.
Well, what they've done is that they've weaponized the English language,
yes.
so that nobody is allowed to speak their language other than themselves. So that's why you can't, as a citizen, go by yourself to court. I mean, I guess there are
technically
cases where
you can,
but who can, right? Because they have their own legalese. And what we have to do, citizens of the world, is we have to reject this.
Right.
And so when you hear Donald Trump not using good grammar or something in his tweet, or even when you hear us doing it, we're saying, no, Let's not weaponize the language anymore.
Right.
Let's listen with how we're talking from our heart.
Common sense,
Yes.
rule of law, get rid of all these sophisticated precedents that have so tangled everything that we do in law that we cannot move in court without some lawyer, technically, who understands this, which none of them do. And so in the end, they just throw paper at a judge, and then the judge says, well, how do you want me to respond?
But that whole layer of the judicial system called the federal judicial system,
Right.
That's a whole layer that doesn't need to be there.
Right. Federal district courts are completely in charge of our country right now. And then the appeals system, and then the Supreme Court hears very few cases. And now we know all these judges we know they're political appointees, and therefore they're going to be political, as Douglas has mentioned many times. And therefore there's nothing about justice in the way it's set up right now. The citizens don't have any control of the justice system. It is a monarchy. It is based on the British court system, and these guys run. I mean, there's a judge the other day with one of the patent holders out in California.
I heard you on the phone call. I couldn't believe what I heard.
That where she is suing for racketeering some of our biggest players, and the judge literally threw out the case before the defendants even replied to the complaint. It doesn't get worse than that. They didn't even have to reply. He ordered them not to reply.
So this system of fake justice is actually laid out in the system.
Yes.
Just like SES is laid out in the bureaucrat system.
Well, it's the same people.
Yes.
It's the DOJ 500. Those are all lawyers, or almost all lawyers. And they're setting the pay for the entire SES system, so all the people that are lawyers or aren't lawyers. And therefore, that head needs to be cut off. If Trump can't do anything with the 8,000 to 10,000 Obama holdovers, then at least cut their head off.
Yeah, well, how about use the Holman rule and reduce their salary significantly? Everybody jokes that he could do it at $1 a year. Well, that might be extreme for Trump to do, but he could reduce it by 20%.
Well, no, you need to get rid of them. You can't sort of get divorced. You either got to get divorced or stay married.
Well, as you know, he's already taken some actions by really putting into place what should have been there from the beginning, which is proper security background checks that are of a military order, not even of a civilian order. That will eliminate many of them. And so we have heard that there are many SES people running out of the federal government system. We've also heard that the civil service system below them, which we could go into how the SES was created back in the late 70s, but the point is when the civil service system was rewritten, they added the SES on top of it,
right,
so that they would start that their lowest realm of pay would be the highest realm of pay of civil servants, because they are somehow above them, because they have some expertise that we need to pay whatever price we need to pay for it. Well, that is completely controlled by this Department of Justice,
right,
ultimate, what they call the top, what's the name of it? The top review board? There's
I forget the name of it now.
But it's the ultimate review board, basically. And
for compensation, yes.
For compensation, and for awards, which are more compensation, and for whether you can fire one of them, which is amazing fact that this bureaucracy is so protected, and you wonder how? Well, this is how.
Right.
Paramilitary organization, it works out of the Department of Justice. Department of Justice has 117,000 people working in it at this point. That's almost 4 times the amount working in the FBI that should be out there stopping crime. We have more lawyers covering up the crimes of the federal government and globalists than we actually have anybody doing any real work against crime. It is disturbing how corrupt this was, and the way that it's so exposed now. It is hard to tell who will be the domino that falls, because there are so many that could start the effect that could surprise them, and especially your choice, Tyler. George Papadopoulos was the most set up and framed person of all. He's the easiest to prove that it was a conspiracy it was actually started in America, but it was controlled and manipulated by the Britons. by the British, the United Kingdom, through Robert Hannigan, particularly, actively through the GCHQ, who spied on Trump in Trump Towers. That's how disgustingly connected it was with one of our Five Eyes intelligence group members. They should have that eye poked out. I keep saying this over and over again. And so what we're seeing here is that, yes, someone like George Papadopoulos, who was totally set up, if he gets good lawyers, could rip this thing to pieces and they could all fall, just as you said, which just is like the Christopher Steele case.
You just contradicted yourself.
Okay.
If you can get good lawyers.
I was going to say, I don't make that many mistakes. I can't wait to hear what it is.
Especially because he said he hired New York City lawyers, and I went, George, they're really bad out there.
So what's wrong with this scenario? And I know I'm a broken record on this, but since we now have discovered that our government is run by lawyers, what if we just make that a rule? They can't run in our government, and we put all civil engineers in all those top positions, and we let them run the government for the next 2 or 3 years. I guarantee you what will happen is these guys are no-nonsense people. They build things that work, that don't fall down, and then they like to move on to another project. They don't like making a life for themselves forever.
Well, how about just instead of just for civil engineers that you have to at least take in 2 courses in civil engineering, okay?
Well, no, I don't. I'm not. I'm going for broke.
Okay,
you got it. It's all civil engineers. You put them in charge of the government, and you let them do the problem solving and work with our government. I guarantee you, we will have this country fixed in 4 years.
So, is your telephone ringing for them for you to get a job up there?
Well,
you would be great.
Everybody says it's all attorneys now. Why couldn't it be all civil engineers?
I'm telling you, we'll get rid of the DOJ and put Douglas and Michael in charge of the DOJ for a while, and we'll make stuff happen.
Well, they crucified you for 20 years, and you spent more money on lawyers
than
any person I know.
Excuse my language, a freaking waste of time. These people are.
Yes.
They produce nothing except hot air. They stand in the way of the creativity of our culture and our economy, and then they attend all the right events. They dress all proper and they all slick their hair back in the same way, and they do freaking nothing.
Yeah, look what we do, just sitting around in our pajamas.
Oh my gosh!
And they're
excuse my language, but it gets a little frustrating talking about. And thinking that we can put an attorney in charge of any problem solving and actually get something solved. No. Attorneys do not solve problems. They create problems. That's the way they get paid.
Yes.
Engineers get paid for fixing things. That's why I'm suggesting engineers, and specifically civil engineers. People who know how to do it. Because they make a life doing it.
Yes. Well, when those civil engineers are finished building the wall down there, send them all to Washington.
Right. It won't take many of them to do the wall, by the way. So they can do more than that.
Well, as you pointed out, lawyers are allowed to lie. Matter of fact,
they do.
At least 50% of the time when they're in court, they're lying. And so what can we expect from them? And as you say, they shouldn't be allowed in government like the original 13th Amendment. Kick the lawyers out. Right. And what people don't understand is a judge doesn't have to be a lawyer.
No, he doesn't.
They have to have good judgment. They have clerks to look things up in the law if they want to use precedent. And also the lawyers bringing them the cases have to represent.
Well, no, they're not going to be able to do that in the future. We're going to pretty much kick them out because they've not done the job. We've already seen the fruit of their activities. We've got to reorganize our government without lawyers being in charge.
Okay, well, I want to just kind of shift just a bit because how about the Federal Reserve? Do you see any kind of motion there, Douglas?
Well, that's the domino that's going to take down the globalists because they really have invested in America's currency, and it can be very easily manipulated by our president. Matter of fact, he actually controls these things more than anyone knows and probably any president has ever known. He has the ability to knock that domino down that will affect the world. But right now, they're warring against him, and they're begging to be knocked down. So I don't know that will happen right now, because whatever it is that they want, don't give it to them. That's what I would suggest. So is that the domino that could take down the globalist control of the world. I don't think they control the world anymore. I think Trump does.
Okay, so then would a successful midterm election be that event?
That would be the greatest thing
right now
ever
yeah.
for American Republic, maybe since the beginning of the Declaration of Independence.
Right. It'll give him the strength and the influence he needs to get a lot of these reforms done in the next 2 years.
Okay, so whoever out there, your circle of influence is, get them to the polls for the midterms.
Well, I love that film that you did of the cat knocking down the dominoes, because it was just a little tiny kitten, which, who cannot love a kitten? And it walks up just curiously and just taps a little domino, and then like 10,000 dominoes fall. Well, that's the way it is, but it's not 10,000 people, folks. It's a very small group of people, and any one of them could go. Robert Mueller, Rod Rosenstein, Rat Rodenstein as I like to call him, even Michael Horowitz for his false investigations, Jeff Sessions for if you find out why he's covering it up. And by the way, there is no plan with Jeff Sessions. Jeff Sessions has now become shown exactly who he is. He's on their side. It could be Mark Warner. It could be Richard Burr. It could be Dianne Feinstein. It could be Daniel Jones, Dianne Feinstein's staffer in the Intelligence Committee. It could be Imran Awan if he was actually truly investigated by Jeff Sessions, which he was not. It could be Hillary Clinton, John Podesta. It could be Donna Brazile, who came out and told all the evil, so much evil that they should all go to jail, and yet nothing happened. So any one of those people followed through on by a true Department of Justice, which there is none right now, but if they were followed through on, any one of them could be the domino to take down the lawyers, the disgusting, stinking lawyers in that stinking swamp that are simply there to fix the crimes of the SES, the bureaucrats, and those nasty, nasty ex-presidents who go into the rogue CIA.